Right. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon and welcome back. It's been a fantastic couple of days here. Congratulations to Professor Dr. Slawomir. Thank you for having us and to the entire team that put this together. I think great set of speakers that we heard over the last couple of days and earlier today, right? And quick show of hands. How many of you, as you graduate out of this university, would like to start your own business? Anybody? Okay. How many of you would like to go into research and academia? Nobody? Okay. How many of you would like to work for another company, one of the big companies or a startup? Okay. Yeah. That's great. Fantastic. So I think I hope some of the things that I talk about will be relevant for you, especially if you're looking to get into the technology sector and work for a business. Maybe some of the trends that we talk about and that we are seeing around us over the years will be helpful sort of like background as you get into the workforce and graduate out of university, right? And as I was thinking about a topic for today's talk, I think for me, I was kind of wondering, like, what are the key trends and maybe what would be hopefully useful for you as you kind of come and take away bits and pieces from all the things that you've heard earlier today, right? We've spoken about leadership, we've spoken about getting unstuck, a framework around that, and we've spoken about the brain and the way it works. So all of these, hopefully you're able to kind of pick and choose what's kind of resonating with you, and hopefully from a technical background or a technology and business background, something here will resonate with you. As you heard from my background, I primarily worked in the technology sector for businesses, both multinational companies with huge employee base, around 15,000 employees, to smaller startups. Currently, I work for a company called DigitalOcean. It's a cloud infrastructure company. We provide cloud infrastructure for startups, small and medium businesses. So I think having worked for these technology companies, I've been able to appreciate some of the changes that have been happening in the business, and how over the last couple of days you've heard like how there's so much technology change, right? We spoke about AI, blockchain, we spoke about digital marketing and all of those different trends. One, as a consumer, of course, we're all reacting, we're all adapting, we're all picking and choosing. We're talking about artificial intelligence and all the different trends. But also, businesses are having to grapple with all the changes that are happening at a rapid pace as well, right? How are they responding? And not all of them are technology businesses. They are different kinds of businesses out there. And how are they dealing with the rapid changes? And especially during a pandemic. So I thought maybe taking a look and maybe covering a sort of like an overview of what is happening from a digital transformation perspective, especially during a pandemic, okay? A quick question, and maybe you don't need to give me complete answers. If I were to ask you what is digital transformation, are there certain words or phrases that come to mind? And you can feel free to shout out if you're comfortable. What comes to mind when you think about digital transformation? Sorry? Innovation, okay. No wrong answers, so shout out whatever comes to mind. AI, okay. What else? Globalization, okay. Wow, innovation, AI, globalization, what else? Okay, I think that's a great starting point, right? So when we talk about digital transformation at a very, very simple level or a high level, this is incorporation of computer-based technologies into an organization's products, processes, and strategies, right? I think it's important to understand when we talk about technologies, it's not just products, it's also processes. How are processes changing? How are our employee base changing? What are the strategies that are changing? So digital transformation has been a buzzword, right, over the last decade or so, nothing new. A lot of companies have been thinking about digital transformation, have been talking about it, and in fact, I've been at a bunch of conferences where we've had panel discussions around digital transformation is coming, it's inevitable. what should we do? And we've had CIOs, CEOs sitting and ruminating because it's transformation. It's not a minute change. We're not talking about, hey, there's a small process change. There's a adoption of a new technology. It is transformation, right? So like I was reading an article recently that said the problem with digital transformation is not so much digital, but about the transformation because it's huge and it impacts multiple things, right? So digital transformation before 2020, right? Like I said, there was nothing new. There was a whole lot of changes that were happening. AI was coming. There was a lot of innovation happening, right? And companies and businesses knew. And hopefully I can bring that aspect of what businesses are thinking about and how they're adapting to some of these changes. So before 2020, it was happening, right? Nonetheless, it was slow, but it was happening. And then these were all the technologies we spoke about, right? Like everything from social media, mobile, analytics, cloud computing, these were all there. And again, like some of you already called out, we were talking about artificial intelligence, IoT, robotics, processors, and edge computing. Technology was in some way an option for a lot of businesses. Do you all recall, like there was a time when businesses were classified as technology businesses and service businesses, right? Like a lot of people would be like, we're a service business, but we're a technology business. So in some way, businesses had an option to choose how much adoption of technology they wanted to kind of have internally. And then come 2020, the world as we know it changed, right? Businesses were operating in a certain way, and suddenly there was a pause. There was just like either you have to survive, you have to rapidly change, your customers are changing, people who are buying a certain way or engaging with your business a certain way are no longer engaging that way. So what would happen to businesses? They had to quickly adapt to the changes, otherwise they couldn't survive. These big multinational companies, for example, banks, till then, a lot of banks had thought, retail banking is fine, like, people come to our banks and we have these hundreds of branches around the world, that's totally fine. Our mobile apps for banking is an option. It's a small division that works on it, that's adding these products and features. But come 2020, no one was going into any of these branches. Hundreds and hundreds of branches, just no one engaging there, right? Everyone wanted some sort of like an online way or a website or an app to engage with even something as simple as a bank. Right? The pandemic challenged a lot of our assumptions, and businesses till then, like I said, they were kind of ruminating on the idea of, hey, there are all these technology challenges and advancements that are happening. We'll slowly start introducing them into our business, because it meant a lot of different things for different companies, right? Because even at the leadership level, they had to learn what these technologies are. What are the implications? At the team level, they had to educate people. They had to send them to conferences like these and trainings so that people could understand what is this AI everyone's been talking about? What is blockchain? No one has a clue, but things like that. People had to really slowly learn and adapt, but with the pandemic, I think it really changed a lot of things, and it challenged a lot of our assumptions, especially for businesses. One of the assumptions that a lot of businesses had was that customers value the human touch, right? And reality was that despite the lack of it, businesses could run in some way, continue to serve their customers, right? Like, for example, COVID-19 proved that a well-architected digital experience could still help people engage and transact with your business. So that was one of the assumptions that was challenged. The other one was regulation inhibits digital transformation, right? For example, an industry like healthcare, it's highly regulated, but they also had to adapt so quickly, right? For example, you all must have heard, like, patents, and especially in the pharmaceutical industry, like everything takes so long. If you are introducing a new medicine, it has to go through many, many decades of trial before it gets served out. But we put out vaccines, how quickly, right? So it's possible if companies or businesses came together, even something highly regulated industry like healthcare, when digital, they introduced a lot of telehealth services. So that was another assumption, that regulation is the big blocker. That's what's stopping digital transformation. But not really, right? And then, oh, sorry. I was one. This was very sensitive. Okay, cool. The next one was even businesses, right, saw some of them as the early adopters, right? Like they would adapt a lot of these technologies. Let's see how it's working for them, and then let's learn their lessons, and then we'll follow. So this was no longer an option. Companies had to really move fast, move quickly, so they couldn't wait for companies to adapt and see how it's working and for them to roll out these playbooks for other companies to follow. Everyone had to immediately get on the digital bandwagon, if you will, right? And the next one was IT teams can't keep pace with digital transformation efforts. This was no longer true. Some of you, might have engaged with either family members, or some of you might have been working with other businesses where you saw overnight, right, businesses enabled remote working options, and IT had to support all of that, right? Like even, for example, HR was seen as this very non-digital, not technically enabled sort of like a department within a business, but everyone had to adapt. And another way of looking at it is how over time industries have relatively adapted a new terminology. Healthcare technology, healthcare industry suddenly is called health tech. Insurance industry is called insure tech. Real estate is called real estate tech, right? And fintech. So everything is tech now. Everything is technology enabled and technology backed. So that's what I'm talking about as a digital transformation. So there is no escaping technology. It is today a requirement, right? And finally, people won't pay full price for digital-only experiences. That was also another assumption that was challenged by the pandemic. Of course, I think having said some of the, spoken about the assumptions, there is a lot more room for debate in terms of whether how these will play out. And like some of the conversations we were having the other day was about, it's to be seen how some of these play out, right? We are still in the middle of a pandemic, if you will, like hopefully towards the tail end of it, but it's not over yet. So these are early signs and early patterns that we're seeing, and hopefully that's what I'm trying to communicate here to all of you. So like I was saying, every company was forced to become a technology company. You can no longer escape digital transformation. You have to either get with the program or, die and perish. So digital adoption took a quantum leap at both the organization levels and industry levels. And in some way, this was something that me as somebody who's working at a technology company, which is a cloud provider, in some way kind of providing these background services, this infrastructure services, was able to see a lot more easily, because cloud also was seen as an option, right? Everyone was like, okay, we have these on-premise infrastructure where they're storing all their data, they're backing up, and taking backups and remote backups for disaster recovery and all of that. But overnight, people had to move to the cloud. And that was something that we really saw. A lot of cloud infrastructure companies especially saw a huge spike in their growth during the pandemic, right? Cool. So yeah, there are some graphs that kind of indicate how the digitization of customer interactions was accelerated by the pandemic globally and from a region to region perspective. So if you look at the numbers, I think pre-crisis, it was happening. It was not that it didn't exist at all. It was happening at a slower pace, but really the pandemic accelerated how all of us were digitally engaging with different businesses. And also, when you look at experimentation and investment in digital technologies, I think a lot of people who very successfully in some way navigated the pandemic were people who really introduced these digital technologies into their business at a fast pace. They were investing more, and people who didn't invest more or were not the first to experiment weren't able to successfully navigate all the changes that came with the pandemic. And like I was saying, right, in some way, digital transformation was powered by the cloud, right? have any of you kind of worked on cloud technologies or taken some of these certifications? I mean, you don't have to. I understand you're studying at the University of Economics, and probably the background is very different, or maybe an understanding of cloud is kind of important because it's so pervasive. It backs everything up, right? And of course, there are specializations that you can go into in terms of AI and blockchain and all of those, but in some way, the digital transformation is powered by the cloud. And today, cloud is no longer seen as a technology solution. It is a business strategy. How do you ensure that you are in a place that even if a pandemic happens, you are in some way equipped to deal with it and to ensure limited sort of impact on your business? And when a lot of companies were asked about how they are adapting to cloud or how their patterns of cloud usage is really changing, a lot of people indicate even enterprises, SMBs, and startups across the board, right? Small and medium businesses to these large businesses, even individual freelancers, digital entrepreneurs, even if you're a company of one, you need to have a website, you need to have an app, right? So you need to, in some way, be backed and powered by technology. So in terms of investments, I think over the next few years, it's getting accelerated. A lot more people are investing more than they initially planned to. And of course, I think the graph below really shows that after the pandemic, though people are going back to offices, many of them are going to continue to operate in a remote world. I think all of us have tasted what remote working means and that it can happen and you don't necessarily need to go into an office. So that will continue. And I think to support that remote global workforce, companies need to adapt technologies like cloud, right? And again, I think this in some ways a study by McKinsey which indicates that how companies' priorities are changing. Everyone wants to become a tech company because they understand that it's really important to survive in the future. One is survival, but the other is also how to differentiate. There are technologies like AI which really impact how your customer interactions and customer experiences are changing. So all of those are things that are happening and will continue to happen. And basically, I wanted to kind of indicate that looking forward, even when companies were asked about how they are looking at digital businesses to stay economically viable, many of them indicated they need to build digital businesses. So I think what I'm trying to, in some way, kind of communicate is that we can't escape all the technology and some of the advancements that are happening. We're all impacted. We're all part of it. And it's wonderful in some way to that at this university, we are bringing in different stakeholders. Of course, the government agencies that have provided the grants to run a conference like this. Of course, there is research and academia, but also bringing in voice from the technology and business sector to really engage with all of us and have a conversation about the changes and the trends that are happening and how all of us can work together to make all of this work for us, right? So that was really my topic in terms of like looking ahead. I think the future really belongs to companies, and especially as all of you graduate and move on and either start your own business or work for other bigger companies or smaller companies, I think it's going to be important that companies that will succeed in the future will put technology at the center of their outlook, their strategy, their capability, and the leadership mandate. So hopefully you had some insights or learnings from that. And thank you again for having me. It was wonderful. It's been a great experience. And I would love to engage with all of you if you have questions. I'm going to be available. Looking forward to those interactions. And all the best to everybody. Thank you.